Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Wow, I can see that there's quite an encouraging group of viewers right now on the site. Wow, well done. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Yes, and it'll be great if we test out the function for now while waiting for us to start. Yes, yeah, maybe what you can do is actually say hi to Siuli and also Hansel, our speakers for today. Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Great. And also, will be also very nice of you, yeah, to in fact start warming up with us by telling where are you from. I understand last time we have someone even from as far as Sabah, where Siuli is from. Hi, everyone. Wow, very nice of all of you, very active.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Hansel. Okay. I hope all of you have a nice lunch before this session starts. Okay. Oh, very, very active group. Yeah, hi. Hi, Jane. Hi, Stephanie. Okay, so let me do a very quick introduction of this particular session. Some of you probably who has been following us since our first webinar till today. This is in fact our 5th webinar, and this is our last webinar for this season. Yeah, you never know, we'll come back again. All right. Zara, why didn't you have your lunch? You cannot skip lunch. I was being told that lunch is extremely important. Yeah. Okay. So as you can see, the topic for today is actually conversation matters. Don't you notice that there are occasions where your message sent across is just not heard? And even if it's heard, it may be differently interpreted by the listener. And we somewhat just feel that the blood is boiling because how could he or she don't understand what am I telling them? My language is so simple. My words is so simple. But how could they not understand what I want? So therefore, often or not, we feel that there's a frustration that's boiling in us. Have you experienced that, my dear audience? And today, we're going to share with audiences about how important is to creating a meaningful bond. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, Sarah, my apologies. Yes, it's fasting month. My apologies, sincere apologies. Okay, so with that, let me introduce myself. My name is Evelyn, and most of the time, all my clients just address me as Eve. And for me, my background is mainly in psychology, even though my first degree is in business and IT. But I just know that speaking computing language is not my cup of tea. So therefore, I just venture into something that always sound like a mystery for a lot of people, which is psychology. And from that onwards, I have been very much intrigued by learning about human behavior and etc. And as you can see, I also pick up one of the special skills in hypnosis, even though my friend laughed at me whether do I hypnotize any one of them. Yeah, I would like to do so. Probably I can get rich very soon. Okay, so without further ado, let me also introduce our next speaker, which is Siu Lee. And those who have followed through our webinar since the first session, Siu Lee has been with us all this while. And for Siu Lee, she's having a very rich experience from clinical psychology aspect, where she has been working in a private center as an administrator. And therefore, that actually somewhat stir up her passion about people. And now she is very much practicing, very much a practicing practitioner who actually runs various therapies for corporate clients as well as private clients as well. And for her, in the past, she has been engaged by several financial institutes to run some charitable initiatives for people like the refugees and the probably the B40s, I believe. Yeah, maybe Suli can share with you a little bit of her experience. And as for our next speaker, yeah, Hansel. Yeah, in fact, Hansel actually have a lot of passion about people as well. I think that is the common link among the three of us is really about people. In fact, Hansel started the passion of helping people, started as early as 17 years old. A lot of people during 17 years old, maybe you and I are rather the same. We're still trying to figure out exactly what is our passion, how do you want to contribute back to the community? And Hansel started as early as 17 years old. And he, in fact, find that helping people to go through personal struggles is meaningful. And therefore, when I was chatting with Hansel, how did he actually come across wanting to help people, even though he has been working in organization? Especially, he shared that while working with the organization went through certain crises, and he can see that developing effective communication skills is very critical. Yeah, and I'm very sure Hansel will share a lot of experience with us later on. Also, a lot of handy tips as well. All right. And in Hansel's free time, he finds himself in gym baking. Wow, amazing. And also just enjoy a cup of coffee. Some fun facts about our speaker for today. Yeah. Um, like I shared, Siuli is from Sabah, in fact from KK. And she is in fact a animal lover. And for Siuli, she was sharing with us that she disliked confrontation. Yeah, so therefore, it'd be very interesting to hear from Siuli. How is she coping with communicating with other people? As for Hansel, he has climbed Mount KK and Mount Tahan. Yeah, wow, amazing. And for Hansel, remember, we spoke about his giving back to the community. He's very much engaged on the Talian Kaseh, especially for this MCO moment. And he's so kind and nice that he actually took up the night shift. And he was telling us that, the line get very busy, especially at 2 to 3 a.m. Yeah. Okay. Now you can see how committed is him in assisting our community. Of course, for me, like I said, we shared common link not about helping people. Yeah, I have something about Sabah as well. Since both of you look at climbed, Mount KK. It's something about Mount KK. I didn't get to climb, but at least I get to view from very far distance. if you count that as common sharings. Okay, and with that, without further ado, let me introduce our speaker, Siuli. Yeah, to share with us, what are the common barriers to communication? And before Siuli start sharing with us, dear audiences, I also would like to hear from you, from your day-to-day life, be it at home or be it at work. Yeah, what kind of common barrier do you find in communication? And just for your information, today, Siuli will focus a lot more from the mental health perspective, while Hansel will share with us from a workplace perspective. All right, dear audiences. Okay, and Siuli, may I hand it over to you? Thank
Okay, thanks, Eve, for
Thank
that
you.
very lovely introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us. Yeah, like Eve mentioned, this is probably the last webinar for this season. But of course, after today's session, if you would like to hear more from us, do fill up our feedback form and give us some suggestions of what other topics that you might want us to cover, and we can see how and when to cover some of these topics. So going back to Eve's question, yeah, I am a mental health practitioner. I'm doing my practicing in Eunoia. So I'm a clinical psychologist, and I provide mental health services to a wide range of audiences. So be it teenagers, working adults, even older people. So I see them for therapy. Sometimes my work also involves working with couples as well. And a lot of times during my sessions with clients, they often bring up this issue of communication. So when Eve invited us to do this topic, I was really excited because this is something that I feel is very interesting and very important in order to create meaningful bonds with one another. So just to give an idea, one of the main communication barriers that a lot of my clients tell me in sessions is that one of it is physical challenges. So a lot of times they say, I've said something to the other person, but either the person ignores me or, they don't understand the message. And usually during this time, I would tell them, well, could it be that maybe the receiver is having some hearing issues? So that is a very valid point why sometimes they might have missed your message. Other things could be like, if you're talking in a noisy environment, there are other competing sounds which causes us to lose focus, and therefore you might miss some of the main points in the conversation. Of course, other than having the physical challenges, we also have emotional barriers. So when was the last time, if you can recall, when you were pretty upset over something and someone was trying to tell you an important message? Chances are, if you are quite involved in how you're feeling at that moment, whether you were very scared or angry, or some of us, when we're very excitable and happy, we still tend to miss some pieces of the information, or we jumble up information. So that's just one of the other barriers that is quite common. Of course, other than that, we also have what we call the nonverbal cues. And for me, that is more towards body language. So sometimes when my clients say, hey, I had a communication breakdown, one of the things I would ask them to observe is actually the nonverbal cues that they are observing from the other person. So let me give you a very concrete example. Let's say you were trying to tell your friend something, and your friend seems to be very absorbed in their laptop. Now, I know a lot of times people will say, yeah, just tell the message. I am doing my work here, but I can still hear you. Now, for my clients, I would tell them, well, just look at the body language. Are they really able to multitask? And, every now and then they offer you eye contact, or, they're completely immersed in work and there's no sense of, okay, no reaction. Then you can kind of tell that perhaps they are not really paying attention. So another thing that you could look out for is the nonverbal cues in knowing whether your communication has broken down. Now, finally, one of the biggest factors in having communication barriers and misunderstandings is the cultural differences among people. I think a lot of famous studies, when they do cross-culture psychology, is comparing how Asian and Western cultures behave when it comes to communication. Now, for example, in the Western culture, it's very important that you speak up, you be assertive. If there is something that you're not happy with, it's important you voice out your opinion. Now, coming back to our more Asian context, a lot of Asian cultures actually find that as being rude. You don't speak up in a group because you do not want to look like you're showing off in front of your peers, and you do not want to disrespect your leaders if they're there talking. So again, cultural differences can cause some kind of misunderstanding and make people have communication breakdown. So that is my perspective as a clinical psychologist working in the mental health field. I wonder if, as I'm talking about this, are some ideas popping out in your head about other types of communication barriers that people have?
Yes, in fact, when you talk about the emotional barriers and as well as the nonverbal cues, actually body language play a very important role. Sometimes we may not be sounding angry. However, the way that we roll our eyes, the way that we fold our arms, those are also cues of how we communicate without knowing us doing it at times. Yes. What about Hansel? Yeah, Hansel, what do you think are the common communication barrier at workplace? Feel free to share that with us, Hansel.
I think it's great what Siuli is sharing. I want to thank you, Eve and Siuli, for
Yes.
inviting me for this discussion that we're having. And a lot of communication barriers that Siuli is sharing definitely applies to the workplace as well. But before I get into the workplace communication barriers, I want to say hi to our audience out there. I notice a lot of you are chatting in the live chat, so that's great. I also want to give a shout out to our Muslim listeners. I hope you're having a blessed fasting month. And I also want to know each one of you, where are you coming from? If you're from Malaysia, which part of Malaysia you're from? if you're from internationally, which country are you coming from? All right, so please do comment below. As for the communication barriers in the workplace, there is a different sort of nuance when it comes to comparison between the workplace and regular life. Firstly is when people come to have a discussion and have communication, colleagues or even between the company and clients, you come in with different understanding, a different past understanding of what they're trying to achieve. And sometimes having preconceived notions that are differing from another person can cause some communication barrier. Another factor that can cause this is also what are two parties' goals for what the future is. Like people in a company, when you're discussing or negotiating a deal with a potential client, may have differing goals, and these can pose barriers or can pose a lot of difficulty in a person's communication. So one thing we're looking at, like the understanding or what you come with, bringing from the past, what the knowledge that you have coming into a discussion, as well as what you're looking for in the future. And these can also be applied to in different ranks between superiors, subordinates, and colleagues. Personally, for me, like when I come into the working world for the first time, right, I came in with sort of a preconceived notion on how leaders should be treated. And when I went into the company, I felt that, whatever the leader said has to be followed no matter what. Right? And this is sort of common especially in the Asian context where hierarchy is very important. And you may see this in a very structured organization, a very big organization. But when you step into a company that has that isn't very big, let's say in hundreds or less than 100, hierarchy is very horizontal, and there's a lot of room for discussion. And that's where communication can be a bit tricky, especially for fresh grads or management trainees. Another thing I want to point out, especially in this discussion, is communication between colleagues. Now, I'm sure the audience that are listening right now can relate if you're in the working world, how we spend a lot of time with our colleagues, and at some point they become our friends as well. And that's a great thing because it promotes a great working environment. But at the same time, when tasks have to be delegated or discussions have to take place, the boundaries sort of become a bit gray. It becomes a bit of a gray area because you don't know when discussions are amongst friends or discussions are amongst colleagues. So this is also sort of a challenge that people have to go through in the working world. Actually, not only in the working world, in studies also. If you're a student out there, you can relate to this when you're having group assignments amongst your friends, and tensions and things get a little bit tense and you don't know how to address the situation because they're kind of your friend, but they're also your group mates, so a bit of responsibility is expected. So that's where communication can be a bit tricky. There are also situational differences. Lending to the previous example, you can be very friendly, you can be very sociable with your colleagues or even your boss. But then when stressful situations come in, when delays come in, or when failures come in, or disagreements, then different sides of a person start to come up, and you realize that, you cannot sort of convey the same amount of warmth or the same amount of friendliness as you did before. So these barriers sort of come up not only from your perspective, let's say talking to a boss or talking to a subordinate, but like if you're a business owner, especially in this time of like the MCO period where we are sort of forced to make very tough decisions for the survival of your business, having these conversations can be very tricky for business owners to go through. But I'm also curious to know what does the audience think, Eve?
Okay. In fact, some audience very nicely, they have actually responded to your question. Yeah. In fact, some of them say that jargons, the terms that they use, can actually cause some barriers as well, especially jargons. Yes, I do agree with that. Yeah. And also, actually, we do have audience who's asking, how do they communicate with a colleague that they just cannot get along with? Yeah, maybe we can answer that question when it comes to sharing the tips with the audiences. Yeah. And looking at the response from the audience, in fact, some of them actually talk about conformity is also another barrier, having to conform to another person. Yeah, I believe maybe when it comes to rank and the position in the organization. Yep. Okay. And Suli, the next question that in fact we can talk about is that what are the strategies that can be applied to improve communication? Yeah. Any tips from you?
Okay, so thanks, Eve. Thanks, Hansel, as well for your sharing earlier. So I guess, yeah, it's very important, that we understand that there are breakdowns happening, but also how can we do something about it to kind of improve the situation. So one of the tips that I have, which I like to share with my clients, and I even role play it with them during sessions, is actually teaching them how to repeat statements that the speaker has said. Now, the reason for doing that is really so that they can focus on what the topic is being discussed. And being able to summarize another person's message shows that we understood. And if we didn't, it's also a way to seek for clarification. It allows the other party to correct us if we've heard the message wrongly. So again, communication is about understanding. So it's not just the speaker's responsibility to say the message, but it's also the receiver's responsibility to repeat the message to make sure that, it's gone through correctly. The other thing that I usually do when it comes to having communication breakdown is I would also look for any kind of feelings or emotions that are involved during the conversation. So for example, if I notice that, the speaker is feeling a bit distressed, whether they are feeling angry or anxious, I would tend to say things like, hey, I hear you're sounding a bit anxious because of this task or this friend of yours. Could you tell me more? Now, whenever we acknowledge the emotion is present, the speaker actually feels like we were not just paying attention to the message. We are actually showing empathy and we care about what their emotional experience is towards the situation that they're faced. So in other words, when you're able to reflect back certain emotions to the speaker, of course, you don't reflect every single emotion. Usually I would just like listen to a couple of sentences and kind of then sum it to one or two emotions. This actually helps the speaker themselves to become aware. And usually when you call out the emotion, chances are you will reduce the emotion because, oh, I suddenly am aware that, oh, I'm that angry. But now that my receiver is also noticing it, perhaps I need to scale down my emotions a bit because obviously the other person is not trying to fight with me. They're trying to understand what's going on. So again, I would encourage them to identify some emotions and every now and then just let the speaker know, hey, I hear you. And that's the best way, to calm people down. Now, of course, there are other things. I've got so many other types, but I think the third tip that I would like to offer to audiences today is when we are trying to overcome a barrier, it's important to be specific about what exactly with the message that we're not sure of, or if it's something that the person did, it's to talk about the specific behavior. Now, why is it important that we outline or highlight those undesired behaviors? Because the purpose of it is to help the person change and improve. So if the person is doing something wrong, rather than saying, I am annoyed at you. Now, when I say I am annoyed at you versus I am annoyed when you are always late for meetings, it gives the person a better sense. What is it that is annoying you? Is it me, the whole human being? Or is it really just one specific behavior that needs improvement? And when you do that, you help the person realize that, oh, okay, this behavior is not desirable. And I'm being given a verbal heads up to say, hey, that's not cool. I need to change it. That way, when you're able to give specific descriptions, people then can change accordingly. So that is something, again, as a clinician, these are tips that I work with and I tell my clients. But I wonder, is it very different in terms of workplace? Yeah. So Eve, what do you think?
Okay. Sully, thanks for sharing with us some of the strategies. In fact, I'm just wondering when we communicate with someone and we address the person's emotion, like, oh, I can see that you are feeling not very happy right now. Have you ever experienced if someone actually, in fact, they get more offended if we were to address what we have observed? What do you think, Sully?
Of course, there are times where, when you call out the behavior, the person will say, of course, I'm angry. What do you think? The answer usually would be something like, okay, since you have acknowledged that you're upset, could you tell me more about what is upsetting you? So again, you're trying to tell the person that, hey, I'm not here to fight with you. I just want to understand the situation so that I can give you help or assistance as needed. So yeah, it's just about being calm and listening to what the person has to say. Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe let's hear from Hansel as well. Hansel, in a workplace situation, so what kind of strategies do you think that we can apply?
I think like in regards of the workplace, right? There's a lot of like strategies that have been out there shared by the internet on what communication, how best to tackle workplace communication. And to be honest, to be frankly honest, like there are many different situations in the workplace, right? Different levels that you're talking to, different kind of people you're talking to internally, externally, different kind of decisions that you have to make in different positions a person will be in. So it's very hard to pinpoint exactly like there's no like perfect formula on how to do it. But I do have a few pointers on crafted in a very nice way to help us as well as the audience sort of like navigate through this very tricky maze of communicating in the workplace. And firstly, I want to start with like clarity. Uh, More often than not, our communication, both verbal and non-verbal, right, can be improved in terms of how clear our message is. And now, like in terms of the things that we say, we have to make sure that simple things, we're not only talking about like what are we requesting or what are we trying to convey, but the tone of our voice. Is our voice clear when we're saying something or we are asking for something? That's very important. Not only verbally but non-verbally, how's your body language? So you really had a very good example of a person who's on the laptop and then someone talking on the side. It's like that doesn't really give a clear image that you are open to listening to someone or you are open to having a clear conversation with someone. Because we are also bearing in mind that this is sort of a professional environment, right, where we are all working together to promote the success of a business. So clarity is the first one. The second one I want to talk about is accuracy. A lot of times communication can be muddled with like the gray area of uncertainty, and the best way to dispel that is with details and facts. One of our commenters talked about being emotional, having emotional colleagues, whereas having facts to back up a certain fact that you're proposing or questions that you have does promote strong communication strategies. So if you are clear and you have the facts to back it, the details, as well as the sentiments of what you're trying to say involved, it does promote good communication in the workplace. The third one is also being respectful. And earlier I brought up a discussion on friendship and colleagues, the sort of gray area there. Regardless of whether you're friends or your colleagues, you have to be respectful to the other person. And this is a very good rule to follow because sometimes you can be thrown into situations that are very stressful, very uncertain also. You don't know how to react to your boss maybe being very angry or your subordinate being insubordinate for example. But if you have the right details to back what you're trying to say, as well as you're being respectful, it's very hard to go wrong in that sense. And the fourth one is E for empathy. Now, a lot of times in discussions, especially between ranks, there is a problem in the understanding of how the other person is thinking. An easy example is if a fresh grad comes into the job, they know they have to do one thing and they have to do one thing right, and they focus 100% on it because they're very enthusiastic. And when they have a discussion with their higher ups, for example, a CEO or COO, there can be a bit of communication barrier in terms of the direction of the company. Both are not at fault, but they just have different perspectives because the fresh grad has one task in mind, whereas the COO or the CEO has a broad picture of the company, and their perspective may be very different. And that's where us as mental health practitioners, we have this very strong skill of empathy, and that can carry across into the workplace with a lot of effectiveness and a lot of increase in productivity for the staff. So with clarity in the way you speak, in your body language, and being accurate in the facts and your details, and also the sentiments of what you're trying to convey. At the same time, being also respectful of the other person, not simply taking advantage of being friends or even being enemies, and also being empathetic. So to understand where the person is coming from, be it your boss, your colleague, your subordinate, or even a client, someone not from your own company. This is to be careful about your communication in the workplace. Yeah.
Thank you, Hansel. Thanks for the sharing. In fact, we have a few good questions from our audiences. And Kali actually asked a question like, what's our opinion how to communicate well with managers who refuse to listen to us? What do you think, Hansel? Any tips? Yeah.
I'm sure the audience will agree with this. Maybe the audience, you can let me know. Have you been in this situation before? Press Y if yes, please press N if no. But I want to know how many of you actually have experienced this situation before, because I'm quite sure this is a fairly common experience that people go through where they believe something is right, but the management don't agree with them. But what I would like to suggest is to understand first where the management perspective is. The E in care is to be empathic to what is their perspective about the situation. And we're going to go more into like the tips on how to manage potential conflict resolution. Yeah, I see a few Ys coming up already, but that's a very good question, and we will be discussing more about conflict management soon. But I think what is the key thing to understand is the position that your management is coming from. Maybe there are things that they are considering that you have not considered.
Okay, thank you, Hansel. Yes, we definitely look into the topic of conflict management in a very short while. Yeah, but which is true, those days when I was working in Big Four, better not name them, but the Big Four, yeah, at times I do suggest certain ideas to my managers or my directors, and it will never be heard somehow. Yeah, either they heard me, but they don't understand what am I looking at. I guess it's rather a common challenge at a workplace. Yeah, and for some of the audience, someone actually asked, how do we communicate well with a person who thinks that she knows it all type kind of mentality, and that she has been with the company much longer than ourselves, and she has this mindset that she's more capable than us. So how do we actually cope with an individual who has such a behavior?
She knows it all, and she has been in the company longer than you, and she has the mindset that she is more capable than you. I think I see that comment, but I think the question that I have like immediately is, what's the problem? Because if a person has been there longer than you, and the person knows it all, the tendency is the person, she in this case, may have a better grasp of the business or the job at hand than you do. So that being said, if she knows it all, whether true or not, it's important to seek first to understand whether that is true, whether she knows it all or not. All right. So as far as until she proves otherwise, or until she's seen as otherwise, I think it's important to understand that like her experience and her understanding in the workplace may actually be of value to you. Mm. But in the
Okay.
case where in the case where she might be, how to say, annoying because of the attitude that she knows it all, right? Uh, that the best way to go about it, I think, will be to avoid contact with her, if possible. Of course, in the workplace, that's not always a possible thing to do, because you need to you need to sometimes talk to people that you don't want to talk to in order to get business running. But at the same time, like if you do have to talk with her, remain respectful, remain accurate, remain clear in your decisions. Apply the CARE strategy towards communication in the workplace.
Okay, thanks for a reminder of applying the CARE strategy. What about Siuli? What do you think when someone has this mentality, this mindset of, I know it all, you know, how would you advise someone to actually manage such a personality?
Okay, thanks, Eve. Thanks, Hansel. Actually, I wanted to jump in a bit earlier, but I thought, better that we hear from the workplace perspective as well. And also because I'm coming into our next segment of the webinar, which is on conflict resolution. Now, of course, with the MCO occurring, a lot of things are probably out of whack. People are going to have a lot of different emotions and worries. And of course, conflict from previous settings are also going to be drawn in during this time, because there's a lot of uncertainty and unrest in what's going to happen with jobs and businesses. So yes, but going back to that specific question about what do you do when somebody thinks they know it all? And I agree with Hansel that, of course, it's important that we practice the CARE principle. To understand clearly what the person is talking about, to be accurate with the facts, to be able to, think of it from their perspective, empathy. I suppose in order to add on for myself, especially when I have to work with disgruntled workers or employees, one of the things that I do encourage them to do is to first listen to the message. And when I mean listen, is really pay attention to what the other person is trying to tell you without the intention to reply or defend. Now, a lot of times, if you think about it in our everyday conversation, we are actually multitasking. So not only are we listening, we are also preparing our ammunition to fire back. That is a very natural and normal response for human beings. I guess that's why, we are such complex creatures compared to those in the animal kingdom. Because we always want to try and retort or win an argument or try to prove ourselves to the other person. However, when it comes to conflict management or resolution, the idea is not to win over the person. We are trying to deal with the situation together. And that's also one of the points on my slide, that we have to make them understand that it's us against the problem. It's not me against you. And that is something when you find alignment with the other person, when you are respectful and understand where the person is coming from without undermining their experiences, this is how we're going to start being able to solve the issue. Another thing that I always say to my clients is you need to be able to acknowledge your own emotions when a conflict is happening. Now, of course, a lot of us, when we hear something we don't like, the immediate response is that person is annoying. That sentence is annoying. However, we forgot to ask ourselves, what is it about this sentence that is bugging me? What is it actually triggering? So a lot of times I would say to my clients, before you think of your ammunition to fire back, reflect back on how you are feeling internally. What is going on inside you that is upsetting you? Is this something that perhaps, from previous experiences that, weren't resolved, and therefore your only way of, dealing with conflict is to just fight back. So a lot of times I would say, hey, you know what? You need to identify your own emotions first and calm down. Just because you don't reply immediately doesn't mean you've lost. It doesn't mean the world stops turning. It just gives everybody a bit of space to kind of think about what it is that each other needs to do. And finally, I would say, it's important to take ownership of your own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So I would always encourage them to say things like, as an opening statement, I message, I statements, because when you're able to take control of your actions and responses, you're not blaming the person. So it's different when you say, I am angry at something versus you made me angry. Because then now you're blaming the person without taking any responsibility for yourself as well. Because, like I mentioned, sometimes when conflicts happen, it's because we haven't resolved some past experiences that were upsetting. So we contribute to the argument as well. And that's where we have to have that wisdom to say, look, I need to take responsibility during an argument. It's not just the person who's at fault. So these are some of the things that, during sessions I would share with my clients. And I wonder if this could be somehow translated in, another setting, let's say for the workplace.
Yeah, I think like a lot of the things you're saying really relates to the workplace as well, and it's very similar about the conflict resolution strategies that we have in the workplace. And thinking about it, actually, right, the workplace, companies are very much like families. It's very much like any social groups that you find. And in that sense, if arguments are bound to happen, right? Arguments in families are bound to happen. Arguments in the workplace are bound to happen. Conflict will happen. Sometimes it will happen to you. Sometimes you'll observe it happen to other people, between two people. And that's usually quite interesting to watch. But when it's important to know that it's normal. These things happen, right? And the first thing you want to acknowledge is to find common ground. To find a base where you and the other person are on the same level, right? Because the conflict is going to happen anyways, so it's important to know these skills and these techniques in order to lessen the blow, lessen the impact of a conflict that's about to happen. So finding common ground is the first step, and we all know this already, right? We all try very hard to practice this, to find common ground, to acknowledge beyond the emotions that we are experiencing. And in the workplace, it's usually because we have an end in mind. We have a purpose that we are geared towards, which is either to complete your project, to get your work done, to appease your bosses, or whatever it may be. And but it is essentially, fundamentally, the first step. You got to find common ground. And a key way you can find common ground is to look at the goals that you want to achieve together, right? Look at the initial reason for the discussion in the first place. And if you can't find that, another thing that you can look at is the key disagreements that you have, right? If you're in the process of arguing with someone, or if you're in the process of dissatisfaction with someone, a very powerful thing you can do, a powerful tool that you have, is to call out the elephant in the room. We as human beings, typically, psychologically, we try to resolve the issue without addressing it. I beat around the bush a bit. When there is clearly a disagreement at hand, you're disgruntled about something, I'm dissatisfied about something, but we try to hit each other and until one of us loses, right? When in fact we can sort of say, hey, I know you're unhappy. I'm unhappy too. Let's talk about what is it you're unhappy? What am I unhappy? Lay our cards on the table and be open, have an open communication, right? So, and that when you bring that into the conversation, you're not saying like, I'm right, you're wrong, or you're right, I'm wrong. We're not saying that. We're saying we're both on the same page. We both have the same goal. We are both dissatisfied. We are both equal. Let's look for a solution together, right? And go into specific as well. You can't just say like, I'm unhappy about this, I think you should give way. Give the facts, give the details. Remember about the tips about communication, where you're supposed to use accuracy and being respectful. And then you want to collaborate. Once you set the cards on the table already, it's like, okay, you're unhappy about this, I'm unhappy about this. Let's look for an alternative. This is also another point that's very tricky and commonly shared. So easy. Look for another way and look for a third option. But then it's always more difficult to bring yourself to do it, because sometimes it takes a lot of creativity to find a third option where it can benefit both parties, failing which you can also look for a compromise where both parties offer and a disagreement can live with coping. So like you compromise a bit, I compromise a bit, and sometimes in heated arguments, ego gets in the way. You feel like I cannot lose to you. I'm higher ranked than you, or I cannot lose to you. I have to prove that I'm right to you. So ego will get in the way, and then you cannot find a possible compromise, a possible alternative. That's why it's also important to postpone the decisions when the emotions get high. This is where I think Suli also shared a bit, is to be aware of your own emotions. And I work with a lot of leaders, young leaders and experienced leaders, where they realize, every time I get stressed out or drink too much coffee or get agitated by this failure, I take it out on my subordinates. I make rash decisions. I tell them off, and then I just leave it at that. I don't resolve it. We know that we have these like high intense emotions, and to an extent, if you think about it, you kind of can see the pattern of how you would react in these situations as well, whether it's giving people the cold shoulder or shouting at someone, banging the table. Everyone has their own way of coping with, say, anger or dissatisfaction. But a good step is to understand that this is your normal response. And before your normal response takes place, take a step back. Recognize that, hey, my emotions are high, our emotions are high, so let's postpone the decision. And in the workplace, there's a very good reason for this. It's to postpone the decision would be the best for the progress of the company as well, for the benefit of the company. So not only are you making a good, mature decision for yourself, you're being professional in your role in the workplace. So I think these are very good steps, very good, very fundamental steps for people to take into consideration when you're experiencing sort of a conflict in the workplace.
Okay, thank you, Hansel. In fact, while you're sharing with us a moment ago about how to convert conflict into collaboration, in fact, it struck me as, hey, actually, it is really feasible and it's doable. So even, for example, coming back to Mira as well as Lee's comment saying about the colleague who has been working for much longer service than themselves. Yeah, I'm just thinking that maybe we can use words to change conflict into collaboration, such as say, hey, really appreciate your years of experience in this organization. I know that you have went through quite a lot. Maybe shall we explore this option? Yeah, it's making it sounds like a collaborative offering. Like, shall we explore this together instead of I think so? Yeah, or you're wrong. Yeah. In fact, one of the language that I learned from one of my supervisor in the past is using the word and instead of using the word but. Yeah, it's like you say this is this, but I think that. Then it sounds like a twist to the whole conversation. But if we can use words like, hey, I like what you're saying, and maybe we can, or maybe we could, or maybe let's do this. Yeah, maybe those are the choice of word that we can apply in our communication. What do you think, Suli and Hansel? Maybe Suli first or Hansel? Okay.
Okay, well, I do agree with what Hansel and Eve has said in terms of how to align ourselves with our co-workers. And this also applies to, family members, partners, our kids. We all need to realize that we are in this together. So when we use the choice of words, and this is where sometimes I also tell my clients, hey, you have to mind your language. I'm not sure how many of you watched the 80s comedy, Mind Your Language, but basically the idea is similar. We need to be mindful of how we say things. And I think throughout this whole presentation, we've also talked about, being specific with details, being accurate with what we're presenting, because really sometimes the way out of conflict is actually to put what are the specific things that we want to do, and also to give the other party the sense that we are in this together, you're not alone, we're not fighting our own battles. So again, that sense of alignment has to come first. You have to identify the person as your ally, not your enemy, before you can get things done. I wonder if either Eve or Hansel, you agree with me on this?
I definitely agree that especially in the workplace, right, your colleagues, so you're definitely allies, and it's a very ironic thing, an unfortunately common thing where conflicts take place, because we are in a workplace, you're all working towards the same goal. You're all working towards the profit of a company or the benefit of a company and your own personal success as well. And I like what Eve said, because like to use words like and instead of but, because you're saying but puts you in direct opposition with the person you're talking to, right? And I realized that a lot of empathy has to be placed in that situation, especially the examples that have been shared by our audience. And the feeling, the sentiment that we are all in this together, like Siuli has shared, does carry a long way, especially in diffusing the situation of conflict. Now, like someone may be very emotional in the workplace, maybe overbearing in the workplace, and may seem like what they're doing is counterintuitive towards the company, right? But it's important to understand what you can and cannot control in a situation, because you cannot control their emotions. You cannot control how they react to something, but then you can control your response to it, right? You can control how you react to it, and your position as an employee, depending on what position you're in and how you're supposed to respond in that situation, right? How professional you're supposed to be, how detail oriented are you supposed to be. Um, and in addressing people like that, sometimes when they become emotional or they become overbearing, or they say or do things that may not seem like it's aligning with the company's goals, uh, it's important to find out from them what is the intent of what they're doing and how it's supposed to be aligned with the company's goal, and assure them that you are in the same direction with them. You are in the same direction with them, and you want to help them to complete the job that they have to do. And sometimes this can be a tricky thing. This is something that takes a lot of experience, a lot of mindfulness, and a lot of patience, as I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going through right now in terms of their workplace. Yeah.
Thank you, Hansel. In fact, I'm trying to tap on what Suli has shared. Yeah, true. Not only that we limit communication in workplace, in fact, within the family, yeah, having to ensure that we use the words like, we are in this together, especially for husband and wife. Yeah, we are here to raise the kids together. It's not only my responsibility. Therefore, shall we, yeah, I guess yes, sharing that will be very good. Yeah, we actually have a very good question here. How do we fix our fear of talking to an emotional superior? What do you think, Hansel?
I think this is a very good question, because it's something that I have personally gone through as well. Yeah, because like I was sharing earlier in this segment, right, that when I came into the working world, I came with the perception that whatever the leader says is word, it's supposed to be followed no matter what. And sometimes like these conversations, talking to your superior, especially if they're intimidating, can be a frightening experience. And But what is important to know is to address what the fear is specifically. Where does the fear come from? And this is a process of introspection, where I'm sure the person who is commenting it can take some time to understand, hey, the fear that you have about talking to a leader or a superior who is emotional, where is it coming from, right? That's one thing. And also, on the other hand, what are you supposed to be talking about, all right? When you're raising up issues, when you're talking about the business process of things, how do these two sort of interact with each other, or do these two things interact with each other? Can you get through a business process? Can you get through making the decisions that you want to make without falling into the reasons of fear from the reasons of fear from talking to your emotional superior, right? So there's a lot of introspection and understanding that has to go into where the fear is coming from. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. In fact, which is very reflective. Yeah, in a way that when I started working in organization, I was also having difficulty approaching my supervisors as well. Yeah, I'm not sure how would they see me in communicating with them. In fact, sometimes I in fact try to keep my distance and lessen my communication. Yeah. You know what? In my past experience, I actually have clients who tell me that, some managers have issue in managing their emotion, and they tend to throw their anger on their employees. Therefore, it became a huge communication issue that they needed to resolve. And therefore, Sully, what do you think about, if you have to deal with someone who's actually in anger? Yeah, how do we actually calm them down and try to continue the communication? Any tips?
Okay. Well, I mean, this thing about having angry bosses, I think I agree with what Hansel said earlier. Sometimes it is very overwhelming to talk to somebody who is very angry all the time. However, definitely the first step is to do introspection, to look within yourself and figure out what is it about this fear that, is scaring me and blocking me from wanting to communicate with the other person. One of the other things that I just wanted to share is that understand that your boss is human too. They breathe, they eat, they sleep, they do everything same as you. They're the same. They've got two eyes, two ears, two whatever. And it's not like they are alien. So if that was the case, I would say to my clients, sometimes we just need to be a bit more compassionate. Maybe we just need to show a bit of kindness. Understand that everybody's perspective or everybody's challenge is different in the world. And what we think we see may be just the tip of the iceberg. We never know what is happening to the other side. So a lot of times I would say, even if you're dealing with the most angry boss, I would say try to spend a bit of time and give a bit of compassion and understand that perhaps this person is not just shouldering the task that you are doing, they are overseeing the whole operations of the company. And for me, I would think that if it's difficult for you to talk when the person is angry, schedule another time when the person is in a calmer state of mind. Of course, all of us will get scared. It's like, oh my God, okay, yesterday the person blew up and now you're telling me to schedule another meeting. Are you trying to feed me to the lion? But actually, if you think about it, the person may have just been angry at that moment. Maybe just before you went into the office, they got a distressing phone call. Maybe something else happened in their life that they didn't have control over. And the immediate response is worry and anger. And so happened you just walk into the room and, well, you became the scapegoat and kena lah. But understand that, whatever it is, we need to keep trying, no matter how scary is the situation, especially if you know that your principles are clear. And if you really feel that, after you've made attempts to try and talk to the same person and the person is continuing to belittle you, to undermine your experiences, then you have to also speak up and say, this isn't cool. All right. We have to practice basic respectfulness. We are all humans together. We're just here in the company working towards a common goal. So while I appreciate your experience, you have to also be able to say that some of the things like, I don't appreciate it when you throw anger at me. Because again, I'm here together with you to do this mission together. It's us against the problem. So if you need time to, collect your emotions and calm down, just let me know. I can always come back. So it's also about you communicating that, again, taking ownership of your own responses to the situation and showing a bit of kindness to the other party. So a lot of my clients who come into session, when we tried it out, they actually came back and said, oh my God, my boss is, some of them say they have elderly parents who have some kind of mental health concern, and then they have really young kids running around. And they themselves are probably not very healthy. They have hypertension. So when you are able to kind of understand their context just a little bit more, then suddenly the conflict isn't so big, because you realize the other person is just as human as you. So that's usually what I would invite my clients to do in sessions. Yeah.
Thank you, Suli.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Putting yourself in the boss's position or your superior's position doesn't only have to be like, you close your eyes and imagine what the person's going through, or imagine what a bad day the person is having, right? It can also be asking them, what's wrong, having that conversation with them to find out maybe they're just having a bad day, or maybe something tragic happened in their lives. I think that's a great suggestion. And also aligning your goals with them to make sure that both of you understand that you're in the same direction, right? And a lot of times, like especially in regards to like fear of talking to superiors, it tends to be a very personal thing. You feel like when someone's being emotional or being intimidating, they're attacking you personally. And that may be true in say family, or in the world outside work. But in the workplace, you are being a professional, you are an employee in the company, and everything you do at that point in time is as an employee, and what the person is doing is only towards you as an employee, not to you personally. So I think it's important to not personalize these things and to set boundaries. The person may be criticizing your work truthfully or not, or maybe having an emotional attack on you, whether founded or unfounded, but it's not attacking you personally. Yeah. And another thing about like communication skills, especially with talking with superiors also, is it's sometimes like when you're talking about self-esteem and confidence, whether they are intimidating or not, some people are just generally afraid to talk, and with therapy and all that comes a lot of practice and sometimes practice helps talking, speaking with the right posture that's confident, speaking with a tone that's confident, creating a habit out of it. This really builds strong communication skills. So sometimes it can be a matter of habit, building a habit and building a practice of effective communication skills. Yeah.
Thank you, Hansel.
Mm.
Yeah. In fact, those really sounds like very handy tips that both of you are offering. Yeah. In fact, Tim, who's online with us, actually say that when you feel upset, tend to actually draw back and keep silent instead of having to lash out the anger. But maybe another person may misperceive or misinterpret as he's being hostile. Yeah. Any thoughts about it, speakers?
I think it's like a lot of people go through this situation as well. And like what I was saying earlier, everyone goes through emotions. Everyone has their own way of reacting to those emotions. And what I like to tell my clients is that emotions are okay. They are not to blame for anything. They are not wrong. Right? And a lot of times we think that emotions are wrong, and the way we react to them, we should not react to them. Sometimes people say that. Sometimes people know that they are reacting to it the wrong way, right? And this can be in outbursts. This can be in like throwing tantrums or blaming other people who may not exactly deserve the blame. Or it could be giving a cold shoulder or isolating yourself. In terms of like isolating yourself or not expressing your emotions, this can be akin to like bottling your emotions up. And while this can be a temporary solution, you don't anger anyone, you don't disrupt the work environment or even the family environment, it is bound to implode. Right? So these things will bottle up, it'll bubble up one day and it'll explode. Which begs the question also then, what is the right thing to do? What is the right way to make sure that the emotions are conveyed without damaging another person's feelings, without hurting other people? Because it seems like the pattern that I notice is that people who bottle their emotions up are just concerned either about how other people would feel or how other people would perceive them. So very much like a bottle of Coke, you shake, 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 all the gas is all filled up inside, right? If you open all at once, it'll explode, and then everyone will get wet and sticky with Coke. So it's important to spend some time to understand your emotions. Like, what is it specifically that is bugging you, right? What is specifically that's bugging you, and who specifically is bugging you, right? Sometimes we get angry at a target, not the right person that we're angry at, but a target, a specific person that may or may not deserve the blame. So a lot of introspection, a lot of care has to be taken into how we act about the emotions that we are facing. And of course, the second step is to act on the decision that we've made. Yeah. And this can be in the form of like talking, having a conversation. It can even be like writing a letter, but it has to be something that has been thought through, right?
Thank you, Hansel. In fact, there's one very interesting question which even personally I would like to hear from both of you, is that what are our thoughts about communication during current situation, like right now, like during MCO, where most of the communication are done remotely online, you can't really see the person face to face. Yes, you can switch on the camera, definitely you can see the person face to face, but all this communication that we're having at this moment are all virtual communication. Yeah, is there any handy tips from either of you to enhance the communication?
Okay, so maybe before I answer that question, I
Yes.
just wanted to add on a little bit to what Hansel was saying in the previous comment about the bottling of emotions. Now, I would say another handy tip for especially employers or managers out there that I find very helpful is actually to acknowledge your own emotions and tell the person that, you're not in the state of mood to talk. I remember when I first started work, I used to have a very fierce boss, and I was very scared to talk to her. But what I appreciated when I was having doubts and as I got to know my boss was that she would always give us a note, as in a verbal note, and tell us that today I'm not in a good mood. Therefore, if I seem a bit out of sync or I seem a bit distant, just understand that I'm not angry at you. It's just that there's something that is bothering me and I have to work through it. So at times, employers themselves, you also need to be able to defend yourself and say, it's not that I don't want to talk to you right now, especially if there's an ongoing conflict as well. The best that people can do is reduce the uncertainty. So, even just saying to the person that you're in conflict with, look, I need some time to gather my thoughts. So it's not about you that I'm angry at. It's just that I need to compose myself before I can have a civil conversation with you. So at least you're letting the other person know that, hey, I'm not just giving you the cold shoulder. I value this opportunity to be in conflict with you, to solve things, but at the same time, I need my space. So that is also taking responsibility on emotions as an employer. That's what I found useful with some of my clients and my own boss. Yeah.
Oh, true. Thank you, Suli. In fact, I think what Suli has shared with us is applicable at home as well, I believe. Yeah, if for example we are really not in the state of mind to really speak certain topics or matters with our family member, maybe telling them that give me some time, I need to restructure my thoughts, I will come back to you. I think that works
Okay, it seems
we have answered yeah, I think we have answered most of the question that our audiences has been asking. Yeah, great. And is there any other question from our audience? Otherwise, I think because the topic of communication is widely applicable, in fact, therefore, we actually went past time without knowing that time really flies. But it's good, it's good. Yep. Audience, if you do have any other question, feel free to share with us in the chat box. We already entered into our Q&A session without knowing it already, but no problem. Feel free to share more questions with us. Otherwise, on your screen, you will be seeing a QR code, like Sully mentioned just now. Feel free to scan the QR code and share with us on your feedback. And that is when we will also hear from you of what is the next topic you'd like to listen to, and we will want to offer those sessions to you in near future. Okay. And of course, without missing this very important sharing with you is that our sister company, People Science, has actually initiated a positively infectious campaign, which is time for us to share a lot of positive energy out there with a lot more people, especially during this crisis moment. So feel free to look it out, and then maybe you can find them on Facebook. Yeah, and then you can follow their campaign. The best is if you can join and complete the challenges of this campaign as well. All right. Yes, fantastic. Yep. And I must thank all of you. Thank you for sharing so much with us, my dear audience. And of course, speakers, feel free to unmute yourself and yeah, speak to our audience. And yeah, I know there's so many common communication barrier that we have shared already.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and of course, I would like to say Selamat menyambut Ramadan to all our Muslim friends out there. Yeah, and stay tuned. Yeah, we will keep you posted when our next season is up. Thank you. Thank you to all of you.
everyone.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you so much for all the
Okay.
questions. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.